it goes on the recording. Right. So to start with, as I'm saying that this is something that we did last week. So for today, what you have to do in the break, and if you are looking at the recording later on, please go and fill out that course evaluations, because that would give administration, that would give faculty and everyone a good idea of how the things are going, how we can improve them, how we can work on different sort of things. So I would highly encourage all of you to just go there and fill that up and try to come up with your things. Okay, so last week we discussed some of the aspects of CSS. And today, by the way, what I'll do is that I'll create a new file, by the way, because with the date, with the aspect of date. So this is march24.html, a file that we'll work on, and same ways March 24 our CSS, so that we have got the style file as well over there. So I'll just close rest of the files. I'll keep notes open at the by the way, because I want to work on those notes. Okay, so we will primarily talk about something very important, and which is CSS Grid, which is a very interesting, component to make your website look responsive and changing according to the user screen sizes, right? So I'll talk about that. So I run that file, and I have this march24.css. I would like to connect it, link it. So I'll link my file, and I'll say march24.css. So my file is connected, and I always have this habit of checking this one with a very bad blue color. So we'll see that, yes, so my file is working. So I don't need you, right? So I just wanted to check that my file is working over there. Okay, I'll open up the notes for this week. As we have talked about the specificity also in the last class. You can just have a look at that one. And now I'm starting something called CSS Grid, and we'll see that why grid is important. Why do we use that grid, and what is the importance of the grid, and how we can do that. So up till now, we have discussed one of the model, and I hope you have seen that that game that we discussed, Flexbox Froggy. Did you play that game? I don't know if it was discussed in your live class or it was discussed somewhere else, but anyhow, there was a Flexbox game, Flexbox Froggy. Have you seen that? So that game had 28 levels. Okay, yes, Tariq, yes, you're right. So it was in NBB class. So yeah, so that was giving you a practice of the flex. Flex is one of the display property. If you remember, we had this display flex property. So we have talked about that, and we said that flex. So flex is one of the arrangement, one of the algorithm that can arrange our contents on the web page. So flex has an inherent problem. And what is that problem? That flex only arranges contents in in one direction or one dimension, so to speak. One dimension. So what flex does is that it really arranges our contents in one dimension only. So by one dimension, again, what I'm saying is that basically we will have only one dimension, and we can only go to this way. And you remember we used to we used to even make you can make a row out of that, or you can make a column, but it was not possible to have rows and columns together. And when you create a web page, it's always likely that you want to have some of the interesting aspect there, that you want to arrange your elements in a way that they look sometimes they are in a row, sometimes they're in a column, and sometimes they are in some other forms. So for that reason, CSS Flexbox has this limitation that it can only go in one direction. This direction can be either horizontal or vertical, but not both, right? So the first motivation of using CSS Grid is that I want to arrange contents not only in one dimension, rather to arrange contents in both dimensions or two dimensions. right? So we want to arrange them in both dimensions, 2 dimensions. That is the main theme that we want to do with the grids. And what does that mean? I'll show you a little example of that. It's from, I think, let's take it from W3 schools. It's a very nice one. So I'll just show you. So I want something like this. I want to have a layout that looks like this. And what does that mean? It should have, like, the header is there, then have menu, then I have a main. Menu means the navigation one, you remember the navigation over here, the main contents over there, the assigned bar or something on the right, and then footer. And what is the benefit of defining that one? I'll show you the benefits of this. Let me just close all the numbers, rest of them. Now, if I show you the content, so you see that if I have made this CSS grid, these grids are responsive. And you see that when I squeeze my page, they will become something like this. And when I start expanding my page, they will expand according to their given width, their given space. You know what I mean? So Flex was also doing that same thing, but you remember Flex can only do the limitation that we have discussed, that Flex can only do it in this vertical, like horizontal direction or vertical direction. But here you see that here we have this horizontal one and this vertical one, and then there are in between some sections, like a table, something like that. So CSS grid is typically is used for that one. The first purpose of CSS grid. Now see here, the CSS grid layout module offers a grid-based layout system with rows and columns, making it easier to design web pages without having to use floats and positioning. I'll talk about some floats and positioning as well, which is very interesting, and today we'll talk about. But so this is basically what it is saying, that if you want to create this grid system, a grid system will provide you a grid-based layout system, and that will make rows and columns, and we can just manage, we can just combine, and we can give our contents according to these rows and columns rather than only being in columns or being in rows. Right? Now, I'll talk about some of the terminologies before going into the CSS grid details. Now, let me just write something over here so that we know that what we are doing. We are doing CSS grid, right? So that it's available over there. And also, I always use, these days I do that. Just add that skeleton CSS. Have I used this skeleton CSS before? And I would have shown that this is a boilerplate that you can just always use. And where is it? CDN. I'll just copy. I want to copy it CDN or the link, right? So this is skeleton.css that I can use over here, and I can call that. So again, just that my document looks a bit better, not like that. Or just okay. So I have So I have just got this document over here, and the benefit of it is that you see that my text now looks a bit cooler, and I want to have that one. This does not look good. It really does not look good. So I'll just add that one. And when I add that, of course, you see that it has some styling being applied to it. Anyhow, right. So now, what I want to do over here is that I want to work on CSS as grid. So let's go to the notes and let's try to find out. There are certain terms that we need to know. There is a term called grid container. The main container that will hold my whole grid together. So that is called grid container. So every grid container will have grid items. The items will be specifically those items that I want to place inside my grid. They will be grid items, right? Then there is another terminology that you might remember, is that grid gaps. So what are the grid gaps? We'll just talk about that one as well. And let's take definition of everything. So grid gaps are the gaps between the grid items. So the gaps between the grid items and grid container is what? Grid container is the main container of contents, right? All those contents will be residing on our grid container, number one. So grid items, and specifically the items or the real contents of each, the real contents of each maybe grid cell or whatever you call it, right? So we have these few terminologies that we would like to talk about. That we have this grid container, we have this grid caps, we have all these things, and we want to just work on that one. So now let's start working on that one and come to your document. And again, now I would do what? I would just remove this H1 for a second because I want to create something. Now a shortcut for creating a grid is, for example, you can say I want to create a grid container. So you can just do that shortcut. Grid container dot. I want to create a class grid container that I will work on, and I will give it a grid view or something like that. So first of all, I've just created this grid one. Right? So this is something that I have given over here. Now inside that grid, let's create maybe a grid item. So with a class, a grid item will be created. Rather, what I'll do, I'll say multiply by 3. I'm creating 3 grid items, right? So they will have a class grid items. Right? And I want to give 2 classes to this one. One of them is grid item, and one of them, to recognize that in my separate style, I will just give grid item 1 class. Yes, I can repeat that. I can do that. Just no worries. Yeah. So Vinny, I have just discussed maybe multiple times. For example, if you want to have 3 paragraphs, so you write paragraph only P, and multiply by multiply sign, and for example 5 paragraphs. So P multiplied by 5 will bring up 5 P's. When you got it? And if you want to do another shortcut, a shortcut is that if you just write a dot and you want to apply a style to a grid directly, not to anything else. So you say dot, for example, grid item. So I want to create a div with a class grid item, but not 1. I want to create, for example, 5 divs with grid item class. So if I hit enter, I'll get 5 of them. You got it? So that's what it's all about. So I can just I have just created. Yeah. And now I want to give it not only 1 class, rather I'll give another class that I will use in my to recognize my code and recognize my code. So just give 2 classes to this, and you know that we can give 2 classes like this. So grid item 2 and grid item 3. Right? So what I have done, that I have just given my elements over here 3 values. Like one of them is that we have just given this grid item 1, then grid item 2, and then grid item 3. And the important thing is that might be a new for you. Maybe it's if it is new for you, that we have just given 2 classes for that. One of the class is the grid item that I want to make that one, make for that, and the other one is that I want to create typically that this one. So now inside that one, for example, I will come over here and I'll write over here grid item 1, right? And here I'll say grid item 2. So this is the text that I want to display on the grids, right? And then you can just change the content later on. Grid item 3. Okay, so the grid items are appearing, but of course there is no styling being applied. There is nothing being applied. So it is right now, it's in its core form. Right. Now, yes. Now let's go to our our CSS part, because I want to apply some CSS part. So first of all, just do that same thing that I have asked you, that in HTML, maybe you just do the font size 62.5%. And you remember that it will make my life easier. My 1 RAM will become 1 pixel. Okay, so first of all, grid item. What is grid item? This grid item class I have applied to 3 grids. So this class. First of all, I'm combining, or it is better practice to have 2 class like grid item 1 instead of grid item 1. Yes, Tariq. You know, Tariq, you will shortly know why I have done that. Tariq, actually, all those properties that I combinedly want to apply on all those 3 grids, I will define them in grid item. And all those individual properties that I want to apply on any of the grid, I will call the class grid item 1, and I will define that over. Tariq, does that answer your question? Yeah. So now let's go back to grid item, and now let's do something. Border 2 pixel solid blue, for example. Let's give some. So now every grid item, you see that all grid items have been applied. So Tariq, now combinedly, whatever I want to do, I will be doing this like this. So background color I want to apply maybe light sky blue. So now every grid item has a light, light sky blue. And let's make text color. Color is equal to white. So color is white now, the text color is white. And font size, let's see, if I say 1.8 RAM, so again, they will be, I'm just taking 18 pixels by the way, because now 1 RAM is equal to 10 pixels. So I've just changed that to 18 pixels. Right? So still now, what I've done, I've just given this style to my this grid item class, which is combined for everyone. So every box has the same property that I have applied to that. Right? Now I'm coming to the real logic. What I want to create container first of all. Grid container, which is what which is the main container containing all those things. So I come to the grid container, and here what I want to do. First of all, I want to say display grid, which will do nothing. As you remember the flex, or if I just do one thing interesting, if I say flex, you remember what will happen? All these grid items will come combined together. Remember flex? And then just for the reminder, I'm just telling you. And justify content, if I say space between, for example, if I say space, you remember all these 3 items will be visible like this. But what is the problem that we are discussing? Why we are discussing this CSS grid over here? Because this grid, this flex will only allow me either make them like this, or maybe sometimes we can change the direction. They can go in the column, but they cannot come for the both. Yeah, 1D only. You're right. So for that reason, what I'm saying, I will say that grid, I want to display them as grid, which is not showing anything, because grid does not do anything by itself unless we create columns and rows. And that's a very important point. Unless we create columns and rows, this grid by itself does not do anything. And how can we do that? Now let's see here. So there is a property grid template columns. I want to create some columns over here. Right? And for example, I want to create 2 columns, 200 pixel and 100 pixel. I want to create 2 columns of 200 pixel, yani one first column 200 pixel and the second column of 100 pixel. Let's see what happens now. Now looks like it has started to see effect. I have got 2 columns, and the first column in the first column there are grid item 1 and grid item 3, because they were in the sequence. So the first column is of 200 pixel. So 200 pixel, and the second, this one, the 200 pixel, and the second column is of 100 pixel. So what it has done, it is just showing me that, okay, now you have got the 2 columns, a 200 pixel column and 100 pixel column. And the interesting or the bad part of this is that this 200 and 100 will remain always same. There is no flexibility in them. You see, they are always the same, which is not desirable. But we'll just first of all talk about, okay, this is the way to create 2 columns. And if I wanted to create 3 columns, maybe if I say, for example, 300, and for example, like this, now I have 3 columns of 200 pixel, 100 pixel, and 100 pixel. Or maybe if I say, for example, 200. So I have 3 columns, 200 pixels, and then second one is 100 pixel, and the third one is 200 pixels. So you can have any number of columns that you want. Right? So let's move back to the previous one. So the problem is, not problem, the problem that I've discussed, that when I'm squeezing it or stretching it, it's not happening. Pixels have that inherent problem that if you give them in pixels, they will never change themselves according to something. Here comes another interesting, unit, and that is called FR. If I say 2 FR and 1 FR, let's see what happens now. So frame, what I'm saying that the first column should occupy 2 frames or 2 something. If you see here, now if I'm stretching my document, they are occupying everything. And now if you want to see that how my website will look like in different views, you can always go to inspect. You can always go to, you see that here on Galaxy Fold, it will look like this. Normal website will look like this. On Pixel 5, it will look like this. On Galaxy Fold, like this. On, for example, iPad mini, it will look like this. So you keep on just changing their view screen and they will just be responsive all the time. You see, if I start squeezing it, they, of course, they are still showing that one. And if I start stretching it, they are showing that cell exactly. So this is one good way of just finding out that one. So frames, if what I'm saying that okay, just occupy the 2 frames or twice the frames in the beginning and 1 frame in the end. So it is just doing that one. Yeah. So this is really cool. You're right. So this is really cool. Now there is one another way. If I do something like this, there is a method called repeat. If I say repeat 4,100 pixel, tell me what has happened. 4,100 pixels. You know, it has created 4 columns of 100 pixels. The irony is that I have only 3 columns. So if I can go over there and I copy and paste that, and I say this is column 4. And again, let's change its class as well, because I will be, if I'm making a class, I'll be making the class. You see, now I have that 4 columns of 100 pixels. Is that right? What else I can do? I can go over there and I can say, for example, I can say, for example, 1 FR and 1 FR each. So now you see here what is happening. That every column is of 1 frame, and you see that they are stretching themselves, they are squeezing themselves, and my website is always responsive. Do you see that? It's always responsive. It's responsive. And again, if you want to show that real responsiveness of your website, you can do that same again. You go to your inspector and you go to your, this is the responsive website. iPhone SE, it will look like this. iPhone 7 Pro, it will look like this. Samsung Galaxy, it will look like this. For example, iPad, where is the iPad mini? iPad mini, it will look like this, and iPad Air, it will look. So again, it's a responsive in all respects. So my content will never be destroyed, never be disturbed, and that will just show me over there. So what I have done, I have used this repeat. So you can just use this repeat 4 cells of 1 frame each. But again, that you will do, of course, when you want to have that 4 cells and something like that. Now, the same way as we have these rows, like columns, we have rows as well. Grid, template, rows. So for example, let's start with the same way, 150 pixels. So I've just created 4 columns and I've created this template rows as well. Now, this is a 200 pixel row. And now, since it was 1 frame, so it is occupying all of that. If I just convert it to 100 pixel, you remember, just to check the row functionality. If I do that, so I have, of course, because there are 4, let me just see, and I say 3 of 100 pixels. You see, when I do the 3 of 100 pixels, so so first of all, 3 columns of 100 pixel each, number 1, and then the 2 rows of 200 pixel and 150 pixel. So now we have got 2 rows, and if you see that first row is 200 pixel and the second row is 150 pixel. Make sense, everyone? So this has, of course, because I have just gone to the pixels, like pixels again. So if I again just do that FR, for example, so of course, you see that this is now showing me that now 3 frames of 1 pixel each, the 3 columns are coming over here, and the 4th one is in the row, in the second row. And I can just, work on that one. And they are again responsive. They are all responsive. And I'll just throw some contents as well shortly, and I'll show you that how effectively we can just work on that. We can do another thing with that one. Let me just, leave that here and work on separately. We can just work on this one, grid, template, rows. I can do one more thing. I can say 150 pixel. Sorry, not template rows, grid auto rows. Yeah, exactly. That works on that one as well. I'll show you. So rows, and I say 150 pixel. So what I'm saying, I'm saying the rows should be automatically adjusted to 150 pixel, whatever elements are there. So when he's saying that, does it work with that one? Yes, let's see that, because one FR will make it bad, but let's check that. So now in terms of rows, it is just taking one FR and one occupant. And now when you start stretching it or moving it, it will just show that like that. And first of all, I'll again show you this in first of all template rows. Let's do that. The same thing you want to know that whether it works with that one as well. So I'll come over here and I'll say, for example, 1 FR and 2 FR. You see that, so what is this FR working? It is according to the contents right now in the row. It is according to the height of the contents. It is saying that this is 1 frame and these are 2 frames. And if I do that 2 frame again, for example, if I do that 2 frame, so you see that now it is basically occupying number of contents and it's just showing that one. Typically speaking, in terms of rows, we usually do not do that, and we use that usually. We can use that like pixel format. So I can use that, both of them, by the way. So we use that for the because in the row format we usually we look at that. We look at the contents usually in that way, and rows are not stretched. So if you see that that responsive behavior, you will find that one. Anyhow, so if I want to do something like this, if I say grid auto rows rather than grid template rows, and if I convert that, if I say, for example, 150 pixel, so make automatically rows of 150 pixel, whatever elements are there. So if I just keep on increasing the elements over here, so I'm just copying for no reason. I'll delete them later on. So if I copy them, so you see that it will just start creating the rows. So you see that 150 rows will be always same, and my columns will be keeping stretching, because key columns are in frames form, FR form, and rows are in that typical complex. So they are not responsive. Why? Because they are usually, we do not check the responsiveness by this one. We usually go for the width as well, width one and check that one. Right. So we have got. So again, I can just remove that. This is creating rows for that one. So rows, if you see that rows are auto rows of 150 pixel each. Right. Okay. Let's take some more elements anyhow and change that one. So for example, this is 5, this is 6, this is 7, and the same we can do with that one. 5, 6, 7. So now you have like 7 grid items rather than that. And let me just go back. And for example, if I say that I don't want any rows for the time being, I just want to have that one, or maybe for the timing, let me just check this one as well, because I want to show you something. If I go to grid back and I say grid template columns 200 pixel and 250 pixel. For example, I want to go to the pixel bank for some time. So now I've just gone back 200 pixel and 250 pixel. So I just created 2 columns over here, right? Okay. And then what I can do, I can just, maybe as I was saying, you go to your, for example, this one and grid item 1, just leave this grid item 1 as well. If I hit a colon and I come over here and I say lorem, I bring up a lorem over here, for example. So you see that lorem has appeared in my this grid item 1. Right, and that same I can do over here. So grid item 2, for example, and I say lorem. So I have the text over there, right? And now I would like to show you something, because since they are again in that pixel form, so they are not responding themselves, they are not stretching themselves. But what we want to say is that this text and this text starts flowing out of that one. And so now if I show you something, so I have got this text over there. Now, if I go back over here, and if I say here now, the old thing that I was doing, grid temp and auto rows, by the way. If I say grid auto rows and I say 150 pixel, see what will happen. Now what is happening? You see, because now it is creating 150 pixel row. Again, that same thing. Someone asked that, can we apply that FR to over there? So now the problem is that I have got my text cut over here. Why? Because this is only 150 pixel, right? So what I need to do is that I need to implement I can implement a method over here and see what is that method. That is called min max. Min max 150 pixel, comma auto. Now see here what will happen. You are looking at what's happening. So min max and 150 pixel auto. So if there are some contents, you just extend according to that. And if there are no contents, for example, you have to be 150 pixel. But if there are contents, you just go according to that content. Is that right? So for example, in grid item 5, I go in and apply a lorem, for example, here. So if I apply a lorem over here, so you see here that these are always these will always be 150 150 pixel. But now min max, as we have said, so it will say, okay, here I have got the maximum content, so I'll go over there and I'll just change that according to that one. Is that right? Are you getting that? So that's what, like rows, if you want to just make them stretchable, you can just do that. Okay, just for the second, I'm removing all this lorem because I want to show you more things over here. And same goes here. So it's all back to this original grid items, because now I want to play with something else. Now, if I go back over here, so I have this min max. So it's also applied to this min max. Now there is another property that we have not used, grid row gap. Now, what gap I want to have between rows? So if I say 20 pixel, see what happens to my document. Okay, just give me a second. Why it has gone there. Now see here, grid gap in the rows, grid row gap. So you want to create some row gap in between these components. So now every row is basically an offset of some value with that over there. Same goes with the grid column. If I say grid column gap, so if I say, for example, 10 pixel, not 20 pixel, if I just do that, you see that my boxes are separated by some column, by something. So now you can just play with this one object. And if you want to apply the same from both sides, make it comment again. So save, nothing is there. So now you say grid gap property is obsolete, avoid using it. Which one, Vinny? Which property it is saying? Because it will be showing you some property name that this property should not be used. Row gap. Okay. Yeah. So where it is showing you this in your inspector or somewhere? VS Code. Okay, it was going on the VS Code. Okay, so just VS Code is also very intelligent. It always looks for these kind of problems, and it really sees that if there is something wrong, it will just try to tell you that you are using obsolete one. And again, when you start validating your HTML CSS, it will just give you an error that you are not doing the right thing. But again, you can use grid gap. So is it giving this error over here as well, Tariq, when you are Vinny, when you are using this grid gap 20? Okay, you check it and let me know that if it is just giving you that one. Okay, now I'm about to start something very, very cool. So I have got these grid items and I want to place them on my document in a very proper way. And let's make it like 5, not 7. Just for the second, I'm converting them into 5 because that will be our interesting thing. Now go back to our item. Now I want to work on grid item 1. Now someone asked this question that what is the benefit of using this grid item 1? Oh, grid gap is also obsolete. Okay, so okay, it's not why my Visual Studio is not saying uh, grid gap. Let's check that. Obsolete. Grid gap has been deprecated in favor of gap. In some way, grid row gap and grid row column have been deprecated in favor of row gap. Yeah, it will work, of course. As far as May 2020, grid gap is shown as obsolete in VSC. Yeah, so it's just showing that stack overflow that it's showing has been deprecated in favor of gap. Okay, so might be it's just gap working for you. I don't know. Just check there's only gap. Yeah, so gap is also working for us. It means yes, so grid gap. Yeah, exactly. So it means that gap is basically being taken away. So there are so many changes that might happen. So May 2020, this grid gap has gone. So my information is old now, right? So in the same way, maybe rows and columns are also being done with something else. So you can just check that. Stack Overflow lifesaver for us, right? So you can always check that one as well. Now I want to work on grid item 1, and this is something very, very interesting that you will see that how we do that. So it says like we do grid column start. I will say grid column start. Grid column. So grid item 1. What I'm talking about? I'm talking about this grid item 1, right? So I'm saying your start. You should start from 1. 1 is the beginning of our screen. 1. Now let's see what I say. I say grid column end. Go and end at column 3, for example, if I say. Now, just remember what is that? This is called 1, this is called 2, and this is called 3. So I want my first grid item to start at 1, like again to the beginning, and end at 3. So if I do it end at 2, for example, will it make any difference? No, because grid item is starting at 1 and anyhow it is ending at 2. So if you say grid item starts at 1 and goes to 3 till 3, it means I'm saying 1, 2, 3, and it should go all the way to the 3. Right. What else I can do with this one? So if I say grid item start 1 and see what happens. If I say ends at -1, it still works the same. -1 means again wrapping it around, and -1 will also work the same. But you can just keep it simple, and what grid item 1 to 3 means that it just really ends at that particular thing. And we can write that both in the short form, maybe again sometimes due to depreciation, sometimes due to some more code formatting. So if I can say grid column and I say 1-3, so I can use that one as well. So it will work the same. Grid column should start from 1 and go still all the way to 3. Right. Now let's work on this grid item 2, which I want to make, for example, as a column, like in which navigation I would place my navigation and everything over there. So now let's talk about this one. Grid item 2. So it is what? Grid row start. So I want to span it with the 2 rows. You remember the spanning of the table that we talked about? We've talked about the spanning of the tables. So we'll say, okay, grid item 2 should start from, what should I write, 1 or 2? Because you see, this was 1 as a column, this was 2 column, this was 3 column. And if you talk about row, this is 1 row, this is 2 row. So I should write grid item 2. Yes, exactly. I should start with 2. Tariq, thank you very much. I should start with 2, which is quite obvious because it should start with 2. And where should I stop it over here? And it really depends upon you where you want to take it. So if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, I want to end this grid item to 4. So I'll say 4. You know what I mean? Now it has just started to create something that looks like more like our required output or required something, whatever we have. So now what I can do? So maybe let's go to the grid item 3. Grid item 3, and I say grid row start at 2. You just start at 2 and grid row end at 4. I want these two to be side by side. So they are all side by side. Both of them are side by side. Right? So they are occupying one column, but of course they are occupying that typical thing. So now what I can do, for example, with grid item, and so this is one way of doing this. Grid item, grid row 2 to 4. Yeah, so that's a very good question. You want to say that one? Exactly the same. So meaning almost everything that you are doing for the columns, that should work for the row as well. And grid row is a property over there, right? So it is also a property. Now I would like to tell you another way of doing that, which is far more easier. I would say, okay, don't do this. Save. Don't do this. There is another shortcut for that one. Don't do this. Even don't do this. So all are back to their original location. Now you do one thing. You say grid column span 2. You remember col span and row span? Span 2. So span 2 columns. Here I want to say grid row span 2. Span 2 rows. Make sense? Grid item 3. Exactly the same. You see, I told you that both of the ways. That's the easy way and the hard way, and you can just work on that one. So now why not let's just remove grid 5. I don't need that one maybe because I just want to keep these contents to this one. So this 4, and now just make this 4 also spanning something. So what should I span over here? Can anyone tell me? Grid item 4. What should I span? Grid column and span 2. Okay. Do you understand what's going on over here? That now we have got this, like a footer. I want so maybe nav, maybe main, maybe the header comes over here, and then it goes over there. Like maybe that's the case, right? And you can play with this grid contents over here. For example, you remember as I told you. So you can say, for example, 2FR and 2FR again, just to make it something like that. So you see that now it is basically what? It is a bit stretchable concept. You see, just changing container and everything makes its place over there. Or I can do that same that I was doing. If I say repeat, I repeat, right? And 4 times, and I say 1FR. So now I'll have to just change it because now I have created the 4 columns. So now I have 4 columns. So these columns are appearing like that. So now I need to work on my that one. That, for example, let's go over there. Let's try to fix it, and we'll try to just bring. And I have to do that same. So grid item 1, what should I spend? Can anyone tell me? Spend what? Spend 4. Got everyone? And so for the second one, I want to span 2 rows, but here we do not have any and that 2 rows. So how would I do that? Can anyone just let me know? That I'll go to, for example, grid item 4, and I can say, for example, span columns 4. So you span 4 columns, right? And now grid item 2, I want to just keep this grid item 2 to span 2 only, right? And if I come over here, and if I say 4 over here, oh, not rows. It should be, okay, just give me a second. Oh, this is out over here, and then I control Y, and then control Y. Okay, so let's see. So span, for example, 4. You also span the 4. Now I have to adjust this 3, like grid item 3, and I want to make it maybe stretching from this part to this part. So what should I do? Can anyone let me know that what should I stretch it to, span it to? Should it be spanning row or should it be spanning column? And if columns, how many columns? Grid row span 2, column span 3. Someone says column span 3. Now let's check with this column span 3. Grid column span 3. Oh, but the problem is that it's not occupying that one. So now it should span row 2 as well, 2 rows. Grid row span 2. You see here now what will happen? That now my code now it looks very flexible, and I can place anything inside them, and now this will all be responsive for me. Rows might not be, of course, and rows are never. You can see any website that rows are usually not taken care of, but the columns are always taken care of, so that my contents does not look bad. And the grid space gap is looking too much. If I do it 10 pixel, so that I can have a, so now you can just, put your header over here, put your navigation bar over here, maybe put your things over there. And what will happen is that your website will always be responsive in all the respects. You see that when I stretch that one, it will stretch things. And when I squeeze them, and again, just to check that with your auto tool that is available, which is inspector, I can just do that. If I go to inspector, I can check that how it will look like. iPhone SE, it will look like this. iPhone XR like this. Samsung S8 like this. Next Hub or whatever like this, which looks good. iPad mini like this. iPad Air, all good. So it's always showing me the responsive side of it, and my pages are looking very nice. Yeah. So this is what we have talked about, that they are typically, we have just created these rows and columns, and you can work on that one. And now just go and bring your contents over there in this first item, and you just place whatever you want over here. You might want to have a picture over here. You might want to have some buttons over there, or whatever you want to have. You can always just go there and create them. Right. So you can just create some navigation bar over here. So things like that. So you will be able to just now do that. Now let's take a quick break of 5 to 7 minutes, and then I'll be back after the break, and let's discuss some more fun, because I have to discuss some more important things over here. Right. So enjoy your break and have a cup of tea. We'll be back. And by the way, I just forgot to mention, you have to just fill in that course feedback, and please let me know when you are done. Please let me know that you are done with that after the break. Just let me know that you are done with that one. And if you are doing after the break, just let me know that I'm right now in the process of doing that. But do fill that in, right? Do fill that. So yes, we have talked about this. Let me share my screen again. We have talked about this, grid items and all those things, and we have just, seen that there are a number of things. And so March 24 document is all grids, and you can place lots of interesting things inside that one, and you will be able to just see a lot of things. Okay, you cannot see my screen. That's good. You cannot see my screen. Why is that? I have shared the screen. And now, Pavneet, can you see that? Okay, thank you. So yes, we have talked about this, all of this. So what I am doing right now, we'll do some more practice of some, interesting display properties or properties of CSS. So, but before that, like, first of all, so again, I'll just leave this document with this one. So for your practice purpose, what I'm doing is that I'm just creating another document for today, and I'm just calling it properties, right? I'll just talk about some of the properties, and you can later on apply them onto anywhere. So properties .css. Now, yes, so I have created a new file and I'll just create boilerplate. So I'll just let you know some CSS properties. Right, so let me run this file. Okay, so it has nothing inside that one. Let's put something here. Some other CSS properties that we're talking about today. And again, just to quickly that same thing, I want to have nice look, not this. And by the way, let's copy this all because I'll be pasting my own CSS as well. So my own CSS that I want to connect it is not March 24, it is properties.css. Right, so now we have both of them, and you can check this property.css if this is working fine. And again, that old good method of applying a nice background color of blue, which is working fine. Go away, I don't want to. Right, so this is our CSS is working and both CSSs are working. Now in this document, I want you to just, bring few things. And let's come over here and let's produce a div ID with a div1. Sorry, div1. I want to create an ID, maybe let's create an ID. So I want to create an ID of div #div1. So you see that if you want to create an ID, you will use hash, right? And I'll say this is a div, right? So there is a div that I have created. Now I want to create here a span, and also I want to give some ID. And by the way, another shortcut, because if you just give this hash, and for example div-2, you will get the div. By default you will get the div. But if you want any specific tag and a specific ID or class, you can do that. Span hash, and I say span1, for example. I want to create a span and I want to call it, and I want to give it an ID of span1. So now you see here that now it will be created. This is a span, right? So I've created a span over there. Now let's create an image, because I'm about to show you something very interesting. And I'll bring this picture from somewhere, abc.jpeg. Oh, it's there. It's already there. That's wonderful. So I'll just give a width and height just for making it a bit acceptable. 300 and height equal to 300. Right. So I have this picture as well. I have this span as well. I have all those things together. And I want to bring another span over here. So span, and I want to give it an ID of span-2, right? So I just created, this is second span. Now I'd like to create a div with an ID div2. So I'll say it hash div-2. So it will create an ID, and I'll say this is div2 ID here. Not ID, div2 div here. Now, so I have created some HTML, and I can, but I know that Zoom does not allow us to copy. I don't know what reason, but anyhow, you can see that it's a very simple HTML. There are two divs, but I have just intentionally made them separately from one another. This someone is somewhere else, someone is somewhere else. Now you need to have all these divs over here, because I'll be playing with them. I would like to tell you some position properties. So now come to this, CSS, and let's first of all create a style for div ID1. So ID div1. If you see that I'm talking about this, right? So let's give it a background color of red, for example. So now this is of red color, right? And I want to give span1 some background color. And let's give some light background color of wheat, something like that. So this is span1, sorry. And let's talk about span2. Give this span2 a background color, another some light shade of it, threshold something. So this is my second span. And then I want to give some style to my div2. Div2 is also an ID, right? And let's say I want to say background color, and let's give it a light green or light any other color, light pink, for example. So this is my div 2. And again, just leave that one for the time being. Now I want you to see, to focus something. This is my first div, like this is a div, or I can write this is a div 1, for example, just to know. So this is my div 1. You see, when I'm creating this div 1, it is occupying all my screen and it's not allowing any content after this. This property technically, or if you talk about this property, is called block property, block display property. What do I mean? If I go back over here, this is the div 1 I'm talking about. So by default, a div has this block property. So it won't make any effect on that one. It is already a block. If something is a block, it never allows any content to run after them. They will occupy every space, even if you make their width smaller. If I make it 300 pixel, for example, you see, even it is 300 pixel, but it will never allow anything to run after that one. Does that make sense to everyone? And this property is called the block property. So this div is basically a block level element, or it's a block property. By default, it is of block property. Is that right? Now, what I want to do, I want to say, and let's talk about this span now. If you see this span, first span 1. This span 1 is allowing a picture after that. And this picture is allowing another span after that. It means these three have by default I'm just talking about, first of all, by default property. So by default, they have inline property. It won't change. Inline means I am inline with all of the rest of the things. Whatever you will place after me, I will display that. I'll give space to that one. Why? Because I'm an inline element. And an inline element always allows contents to flow after that one. Right? Now I want you to focus on something. If I go over there, and if I come over here and I say height, I want to apply some height to it as well. So if I say 300 pixel, looks bad. We just want to see the difference, so I can just 100 pixels, for example, 150 pixel, 150 pixel. The height is 150 pixel, and I have changed already the width of 300 pixel. I want to show you something. If I come over here and I say height, and I say, for example, again, 150 pixel of this, I want to make its height to 150 pixel, and I want to make its width to, for example, 300 pixel. Same like I have done with the div 1. Save. Do you see that implemented on span 1? No. And why is that? Because span inherently is an inline element. Its display property is inline. It does not allow a height and width property to be implemented on an element, because it does not have its own area to work on. Is that making sense to everyone? Because I want to tell you why we use this inline and inline block, because we have been using this, but we might not do you might not know the real concept. So it does not allow it. Now let's do one more thing. There is a property called margin. I've talked about this. So if I say margin 10 pixel or 20 pixel, so now you see that it has just stretched everything 20 pixel because I applied the margin on that one. How about this span? Let's apply some margin to this 20 pixel, the same one. I'm applying same properties on span as well. You see, margin. If you notice, something has happened. If I just cut that or make it comment, you see this span is something like this. When I'm doing margin 20 pixel, what does that mean? Yeah, exactly. So what does that mean? It means that it should apply margin on all 4 sides. You remember, all 4 sides. So if I hit save, can you tell me that what is happening? Is that applying the margin? It is only applying the margin on the left and the right of it. So margin is allowed, but only on the left and the right. Why? Because its property is inline. because its property is inline. That's why I can see, because what I can see is that, right, what I can see is that we have this margin is applied only on the left and the right. So that is typically something that we have. So left and the right is only given, and so it means that I cannot apply the top and left, like top and bottom margin, only left and right. It can just stretch away. Okay, let's check with the padding. 20 pixel. Now you see that padding is implemented, and padding is implemented on all four sides. But it looks very bad because it does not have a block, so it will just it is just doing everything inside that one, which looks very bad. Now, the concept is that its display property by inline by if you see by default, its property is that it will allow this margining. It is allowed 20% of margin, but it is not allowing margin on the top and the bottom. So things like that. So now if I go over here and I change it to block, if I change it to block, see here, and hit save, see what will happen. Now my span has all those properties being implemented, and it has gone in the block way. Looks bad. I have changed the nature of my span. You see, I have changed the nature of my span. I want it to be inline, but I want it to appear or apply all these styles as well. So what I'll say, rather than applying this in like only block, I will say inline dash block. Now you understand what does that inline dash block mean? Now save. Now hit save and see what is happening. Now looking very bad, but you know what is happening? That now this span is inline also because it is allowing something in front of it, and it is a block also because it is allowing the height and width and everything to be working on. Pavneet, are you making sense of inline block? If I make inline block, it will become a block in it itself, but it will remain inline also. And the same thing if I come over here and I do with my div 1, see what will happen now. If I hit save, you see that now this div 1 is also allowing content to come in front of it. So it is allowing my div contents to come to that one. Is that clear? So now that's what we are saying, that now inline block will make an element to be behaving like a block, which is good because I always want. Now if I apply padding, this will look very nice because now span has gone into that behavior. So if I say padding and I say, for example, 20 pixels, something like that. So you see that padding will be applied and it will start looking more good or like that. So inline block, do you understand what is that inline block? And you see here, because this picture is also an inline. So if I come over here and I go to my IMG and I say display, and I say again inline block. Now my picture has gone. Oh, sorry. It has become a block. It was already inline, by the way. So again, if you want to check that one, for example, that what block will do specifically, if I convert it to block, okay, why it's not applying the data? Let me just give it an ID and just check. I'm just giving it an ID and check whether it works with the ID. Oh, what was the wrong? What is wrong that I'm doing? IMG is a tag. It's not an ID, by the way, right? So IMG is a tag. So you see that now it has become a block, and now it has just thrown away this second span out of its way. And why? Because it is saying that now I am a block and I will never allow any contents in front of me. Make sense, everyone? So this is basically, so now if I do that again, inline block, the picture, inline block, now this looks good. Right? So this looks very nice. And one of the things that is image inline or inline block by default. No, Tariq, it is inline by default. It is inline, not block. Okay. And how can we check that? I can show you. So right now it is inline, and let's apply a height and width. I think rather you are right. I'll have to check that. Height 300 pixel. I think it will take the height and width from here. It will take the height and width. So for example, let's change it dramatically crazy so that we can know. So 600 and height 600. So I think you're right. You're right. I'm mistaking. The images are, yes. So the images are, I'm sorry about that. The images by default, they are called inline dash block. So they are by default inline block. This is the default behavior of pictures. Tariq, very nice question. I forgot about that, but this is inline by default. Now I can make it again. I can make it. I can change it. So you see that this is inline block and it's allowing the span over there. But if I convert it into block only, and if I just save that, now you see that it has become block. Yeah. So that's wonderful. So our picture, it is typically doing what? It is like the image. They are always they are inline block, and they just change according to that. Some of the properties. Right. So that's some of the properties of this one. Okay. What else? So you understand this display and all those things. And the last thing that I would like to discuss over here is let's talk about the positioning. Positioning is very interesting. Okay. So now these are some of the properties. I have just made them block, and usually what we do is that we just try to make them block so that they have all the features implemented. So I'll say display, and I'll say, for example, inline block, so that it is now that is also becoming a block, and it is typically it's inline as well, and it's also a block. And I'll come to this one and I'll say, okay, you also just go and you become this inline block for me, because I want you to be in a new line. And so you see that they are all coming into their own position or own grid values. Right. So this is my document, and these are all the things. Now the last thing that I want to discuss over here is related to the positioning. So I'll just write a few comments over here. So positions are very interesting in CSS, and positions have different values. So I'll tell you the first value, which is static. Static, which is the default position of any element. So these are all static in their own sense. These are all static, by the way. Right? So if I say, for example, this div1, its position is static. So I'm just not making any difference to it, because static is already, so position property is already by default static. Right? So I can just say that this is static position, and I've not made any change to that one. Now, what is the other type of position? The second position is relative. Relative position. If you want to do something as relative, I'll just show you that what will happen. For example, if I go to this div1 or maybe span1, and I come over here and I say position, and I say relative. I'm talking about this what? Span1. Right? Let's do that. Now, relative to what? I want to say, for example, left 20 pixel. Am I doing this span1? Okay. So now I want to apply this relative position to span1. There is a little catch. And what is that catch? The parent, if you are doing this relative, if you are just doing this one as relative, you need to do what? You will have to change its parent to be absolute. So what is the parent of this span1? Let's talk about this. Span1 is over here, and its parent is, for example, body right now. So if I come over here and I'll have to define body. So remember, if you are doing relative, you will have to tell to relative to what. So for that, you will say position, for example. Let me check if it works with the body. So you will have to say absolute. I'm using the other way around. Let's just check that one, and then okay, just right. Just hold on a minute. I want to apply this to this div rather. So I was just other way around. So if I want to have this absolute value, right? I want to have this to obsolete and like absolute value. So what do I mean? That I want to make it absolute and to what? For example, I will say relative. So parent should be converted to the relative. And now if you see that, now it is basically a 20 pixel on the left. So for example, if I come over here and I say left 200 pixel. So you see that span has gone over there. Okay, Pavneet, I'll just explain that to you again. So what I'm saying is that I have given this absolute. So this is the third type of position. Third type of position is absolute. Absolute position. Now, if you want to make something absolute, you need to make its parent. So Pavneet, I'm just repeating that. You need to make its parent. So if I make this span 1 as absolute, and if it's a parent, for example, the body is the parent over here right now. So I will say that, for example, just go over there and make it. And what I'll do is that rather than make it with the body, I'll just do something. I'll go by HTML and let's put all of them inside a container, for example. So I'll create a container class here. So I want to put all these divs and everything span inside another div. So you can have any number of div, So all of this div have gone inside that one. So now I have this div class container. So I will come over here and now I'll define some style for the container. From starting, what is position? How we use it? Okay, so you have just missed that. So position is how do you want your elements to be displayed on your web page? So for example, I've said that static means the original position that is always there. So for example, if I just remove this one for the time being, absolute, I remove that one. And if I say, for example, this div one is static, I just take that out again. So this is span 1 and its background color and margin is there, inline block is there. Okay. So now why its background has gone away? Oh, I have by mistake done that. That's why. So you see here. So these are all on their static position. So static position means wherever you have defined, they will be just over there. So this is called static position. Now I told you that then there are absolute and relative position. So if I want something to be in absolute position, I will come over here and I will say position. So I'm talking about now div 1, which is red color. So I'll say position absolute. Position absolute. And now position absolute means that I have taken away. And what is this parent? So I was just telling you, the parent over here is the container, dot container class. Now what I have done, that this div is also the child of this container, class container, right? So you come over here and you say its position is relative. And now this div will act according to this one. And if I say, I will get this handlers. I will have a left handler, for example, I say 20 pixel. So this has gone 20 pixel of that div. So for example, if I say right or not right, top, if I say top 100 pixel, you see it has gone at the bottom of this one. So positioning of the element, where you want to position them. So it is an absolute position and it will always remain at this position, which is according to it's an absolute position. From the left, it's 20 pixels, and from the right, it is. So for example, if I say from the left, it is 200 pixels, you say that it has gone 200 pixels over there from its div. You know what I mean? So it's basically the position of absolute, like an absolute position, left 200 and top 100, and this just moves on that, and you can just move it anywhere in the document. You say 300, it will go like this. If you say 600, you will see that it has gone out of the screen maybe sometimes, and we can literally do that. I can say 1000, for example, it goes away. You know what I mean? And maybe on a click of a button, you say that it should come back to this original position, something like that. So but anyhow, you can just make its position according to that one. This is called absolute position. Right. Now here comes another one, which is called fixed position. Positioning is kind of confusing. Is there any website that we can go? Oh yeah. So I'll just share the link with you. And rather than that, I would like to just okay, just give me a second. What I'll do is that in this properties, I'll mark all this comment, and I know that it might be a bit confusing, so I'll just mark this as a comment. I have just made this container, and I'll just take this away as well. Right, and now let's create some of the items inside that. So I'll create some item, and I'll let you know, because it might be getting confusing. So I will just just change this one, and I'll let you know that what I'm doing. So for example, inside this div, I'll just create a class item1, right? And I create a class item2. Now please bear with me, and now I'll just explain you everything. And in the properties, now let's just do not talk about this div1 and div2. Rather, I come over here, right? I come over here, and now I'm just saying this container. First of all, this container contains. So I'll first of all talk about this container properties. Now see here, Tariq. Hopefully now you understand that. So container properties. I want to talk about container properties. So I say width, for example, 400 pixel, and height 400 pixel, and border. I want to give it a border, a solid border of 5 pixel, solid black, and margin. I will just give it, for example, 20 pixel in auto. I can just say 20 pixel auto, not merging, margin. So margin 20 pixel auto. Now you see here, I have just created this container, right? So Tariq, this is the container that we have. Now see here, I would come over here, and now I have two classes over here, dot item1 and dot item2. I want to apply certain properties to both of them. So I'll say item1 and comma dot item2. I want to apply certain, you remember, certain properties I want to apply on both of them. So I say 200 pixel. Both of them should be 200 pixel. 200 pixel, and both of their height should be 200 pixel. So they are not still there. Why? Because of course we have not given anything to that. Now let's come back. So both of them have the same properties. Now I want to apply the different properties. So I say background color, and I say its background color should be, so for example, this tomato, something like that. Now I get that one, right? Item 1. And now I get this item 2. Background color, and let's take some other color, tomato, teal, for example. So these are the two boxes that have appeared over here, right? So they are 200 pixel in height, 200 pixel in width, and they are now just visible over here, and you can see that they are coming inside that box. Let me just make this box container a bit bigger. So now I have this container. So these are the two ones. Right? So now see here. Right now, these two items are in their static position. The normal flow of the document. They are inside a container, and they are at their required places where they must be, because they are inside this container, and they are according to their own places. They are specifically being placed at a static location, and the static location means that if I change their position, something like that, come here, and if I say position and I say static, I'm not doing anything at all. They will be at their original location, and they will not be changed. They will not do anything at all that I want to do. You know what I mean? Now, after that, let's talk about a relative position. So for example, there is another position property which is called relative. When I say a relative property, I get some of the handlers. One of the handler is left. So if I say left 20 pixel, you see what has happened? That now it is relative to its parent, its box, and it's relatively 20 pixel from the left offset. If I say top 20 pixel, now my box is 20 pixel from the top as well. Tariq, are you getting that now? So I'm trying to position this box somewhere over here. So relative position does what? Relative position typically does that it gives our some handlers that we can just use. For example, right now I can just see the left and top, like effect of left and top. If I say 200, if I say 200 again, you will see that it has gone at a so 200 from the top and 200 from the left. So you see that it has gone to this position. Right? So this is relative positioning of a box. And if I can say, like for example, left is not 200, rather I might want to make it 300. So you see that this box goes over there. So relative gives you these handlers, and you can play with these handlers. And if you will play these handlers, you will definitely enjoy them. Now, the third one, this is the second one, the relative one, right? This one relative. So relative gives you a handler, and you can just work with that one. Now there is another property which is absolute. If you say absolute, that is where point comes. If I say absolute to this tomato one, like I'm just talking about still absolute position. If you give it absolute position, so absolute position according to what? If you want to make it according to its parent, you have to change the position of the parent to the relative one. You know what I mean? Now you need to do that. So absolute, but according to what? According to its parent. So you need to change the position of parent also to relative. That this is relative and this is absolute according to that relative position. And if you say, for example, 0 pixel, you see that it has left is 0 pixel. If I say 0 pixel, you see that it has just overcome that one, because now it is out of the normal flow of the document. So now it's hiding my all item 2. Item 2 is there, but it's hidden behind that. Why? Because I have done this absolute positioning. Now, if I just remove this position relative, let me show you. Right now, it's not showing any effect, but remember, whenever you are doing that, whenever you are just defined. So according to parent, it's 0 pixel. So now if I just start moving it, is a bit away. You see that I can see the element from the behind. If I say 100, it will be half on that. If I say 200, so it goes away and at that position. Isn't that interesting? Because we can position some of the element, some of the boxes. If you want, you can just always position them. So this is called absolute positioning, and we are still talking about this item 1. Now, what is the other one? So absolute position can be used to make it like in the center, or you can place it anywhere else, wherever you want it. You can just take that one. Now there is another property which is called fixed, and this is very interesting. Fixed. Now see fixed. Now in the fixed property, do you see that it is left 200 pixel and top 0? Now it has gone again. It has now gone out of the parent, and fixed means it will be associated with the main document, and it will always remain fixed. So for example, if I go to my document and if I add some lorem here, 1000 paragraphs, just to show you some text. So if I you see that if I scroll down in my document, this will always be fixed. Are you looking at? It will be a fixed position. Now, if you have given something as a fixed position, it will always remain its original location. Have you seen that? There are few people. I'll show you. If you do that 0 pixel over here as well. Now you see my document will keep on rolling, but this box will be always the same. Interesting, isn't it? For example, you say that I want to make a menu inside that one. So you will say, okay, make its height is equal to, for example, 100%, something like that. So I want to change its height. So you see that now it will always be here. It will never go away. And 100% is not showing that one. So if I make it some pixels, so if I 300 pixel, I change this height. So you see that now it is always here. See everyone? Fixed position, fixed does what? It will just keep that element over there. But remember that this is not attached to the parent. It is attached to our viewport, view area, or the window. So it is attached to its window. So if I say 0, if I just make it 100, 10 and 10, it will just go away in my window. So if you see here, that now it is 10 pixels away from that one, but it is still there. It will always be there. Right. So now that's the property. And now the last property, which is the most cool one, and you would enjoy that most one. And that property is, I'll just let you know. So for example, this is fixed, and this position is, for example, over here. Now let's make it, for example, another feature, and that is called sticky. Sticky. Now see here, sticky will make it to the parent, for example, first of all. But what it does is that it will just always, so the parent goes away, it goes away. But again, if you see, and why it is just happening, because I think it is because relative position over here. I think I'll just check that if it goes away. No, so it's just with the parent, but you see that it's available. And let me take it out of this container. For example, for a second, I want to just take it out of the container for a second. I just place it over here. So it's over there. So you see, sticky means that it will just stick to its original position. And you can just give some properties over there. So in sticky, you can say, for example, it becomes sticky. Where is that? Here. It becomes sticky, but when the top reaches to 100 pixel or 200 pixel, see what happens. 200 or 200 pixels. Now you see here. Now what happens? If I just go over there, you will say that it is sticky to 200 pixels. Is that right? 200 pixels, it will just keep on sticky over there. It will never move over there. So it is on that original position, and it's sticking on that particular thing. And if I say again top 0 for this one, you don't see the difference between fixed. Okay, let me just see if I can show you the difference between those two. Okay, okay, I got your point. Now let's do this with this one. So for example, I convert it to fixed. Fixed, and fixed also means that it is at the main document. Now let's talk about this item 2, and I say position, and I say sticky, right? So I've given that position sticky, and I say 200 pixel, sorry, top 200 pixel, for example. Now you see here, do you see the difference now? And let me put that item 1 back on there. I'll just put that back over here. Okay, just give me a second. that property. Let me just see that if I can just show you that one. This is the fixed one, and this is the sticky one. So if you notice something here, you see that it just goes up at the top, and it sticks at the 200. When I scroll up, it goes away, and when I come over here, it just sticks over here. You see, Vinny? Are you looking at the difference? And I'll see that if I can find a better example for you. But anyhow, this is just showing that example. This one is fixed, and this one is sticky. So it sticks at 200. It never goes ever anything that. So whenever 200 reaches, it just stops over there. Yes. So now if I can just do that, for example, 100 pixel. So now if you see that, it will keep on. It will just stick at the 100 pixel when I'm going back. You see 100, and it stops. Yeah, exactly, fixed on the document, but it will be and it takes a value over there as well that it will receive, and it will just go according to that. And I might squeeze up a project and a little project practice project that might give us more practice with that one. So I'll just look at that if I can find that something. Right. So I've just given this for this. So I don't want this one. So again, I cannot scroll now. So you can just do that. So just practice that one, and let me know if you have any questions. Just practice with some of the columns. We have talked about today lots of interesting things. We have talked about the CSS grid, which is very interesting, and these sticky positions and positions like that. So let me know if you have any questions later on, and we can just see that. Right. So now those who are having problems, I would like them to stay over here, and I'll discuss with them. And those who do not have anything to discuss, they can just leave now.